welcome back. This is my book club, and I'm going to be reading more from Beyond Good and Evil. It's late. It's 1:50. Had a good day, nice. Got a new cuff. Had some food. Hung out with friends, and what better way to end that than start the first chapter of Beyond Good and Evil. So if you don't remember, we did I believe just the introduction, which took me so long and was very, very boring, but we can finally start. So after the introduction, it says here, there's translator's note, and let's see. Yeah, let's read it. This is from R.J. Hollingdale, and so we start. Like all his books from Human, All Too Human onwards, Beyond Good and Evil got off to a very slow start. It was written in the summer of 1885 and the winter of 1885 to 86, with additions during the spring of 1886, printed during June and July, and published in July and August under the imprint of C.G. Naumann of Leipzig. It was the immediate successor of Zarathustra, the first two parts of which had been published in 1883, and the third in 1884, by Ernst Schmeitzer? Schemtes. Now, Karl Marx Stadt. I'll show you right there how that's spelled. Can you see? It's kind of hard to see. I don't want the brightness too much because it reflects off my glasses. It's a dark episode, it's dark, and the big light isn't flattering. And that lamp, also not entirely flattering. Maybe I'll move it. We'll see. All three volumes had sold very badly, and the fourth part, which should have appeared in 1885, was spared similar embarrassments by being merely privately printed in 40 copies. Nietzsche blamed Schmeitzner for this lack of success, and when Beyond Good and Evil was ready, he bore the expense of printing the book, and Naumann distributed it. His ambition was modest enough. He had hoped to cover his costs by selling 300 copies. By June of 1887, only 114 had. The results were in fact precisely what they had been since Human, All Too Human appeared in 1878, and only 170 copies were sold in its first year. His books went unread. He saw no further edition of Beyond Good and Evil. In the 1890s, there were 3 editions, 91, 93, and 94, and in present century has never been out of print. The standard edition, established by Gesamthausgabe in Grosso Ktav in 1894 FF. This is hard. It's a big word right there. You seen that? That's ridiculous. It differs from the first edition of 1886 only in the most trifling respects. So basically, it's been the same ever since it started printing. It's the beginning of chapter 1. This is the preface. From Sils Maria in Upper Engadine, from June 1885. Now, if we double check when this book was released, because I forget every single time. 1886. Right, because it was published. I just read it. Wow. Okay. So, from some woman. I don't know who this is. Not just some woman. No woman is some woman. They're all individual and beautiful. Supposing truth to be a woman. Dash. What? That's what it reads. I'm going to move this light because I feel like not being able to see half my face isn't helpful. So, give me a sec. Okay, I feel like this is quite a contrast of how it was. I just brought the lamp closer, and I found Little Will Byers. This is his upside down version. Don't know what he was doing over there, but usually it's over there. Yeah, okay. Now we can start. Supposing truth to be a woman, what is the suspicion not well founded that all philosophers, when they have been dogmatists, have had little understanding of women, that the gruesome earnestness, the clumsy importunity with which they have hitherto been in the habit of approaching truth, have been inept and improper means for winning a wench? Certainly she has not let herself be won, and today every kind of dogmatism stands sad and discouraged, if it continues to stand at all. For there are scoffers who assert, and it has fallen down, that dogmatism lies on the floor, more, that dogmatism is at its last gasp. To speak seriously, there are good grounds for hoping that for, for hoping that all dogmatizing in philosophy, the solemn air of finality it has given itself, notwithstanding, may none the less have been no more than a noble childishness and tyrannism. And the time is perhaps very close at hand when it will be grasped in case after case what has been sufficient to furnish the foundation and stones for such sublime and unconditional philosophers. Edifices, as the dogmatists have hitherto been constructing, some popular superstitions of what others from time immemorial, such as the soul superstition, which as the subject and ego superstition has not yet ceased to be mischief even today. Perhaps some play on words, a grammatical seduction, or an audacious generalization of the basis of very narrow, very personal, very human, all too human facts. Let us hope that dogmatic philosophy was only a promise across millennia, as, in a still early age, was astrology, in the service of which more labor, money, ingenuity, and patience has perhaps been expended than any real science hitherto. We owe it to it and its super-terrestrial claims to the grand style of architecture in Asia and Egypt. It seems that in order to inscribe themselves in the hearts of humanity with eternal demands, all great things have first to wander the earth as monstrous and fear-inspiring grotesques. Dogmatic philosophy, the doctrine of the Vedanta in Asia and Platonism in Europe, for example, was a grotesque of this kind. Let us not be ungrateful to it, even though it certainly has to be admitted that the worst, most wearisome, protracted, and most dangerous of all errors hitherto has been a dogmatist error, namely Plato's invention of pure spirit and good in itself. But now, when that has been overcome, when Europe breathes again after this nightmare and can enjoy at any rate a healthier sleep, we, whose task is wakefulness itself, have inherited all the strength which has been cultivated by the struggle against this error. To be sure, to speak of any spirit and good, as Plato did, meant standing truth on her head and denying perspective itself, the basic condition of all life. Indeed, one may ask as a physician, how could such a malady attack that loveliest product of antiquity, Plato? Did the wicked Socrates corrupt him after all? Could Socrates have been a corruptive youth after all, and have deserved his hemlock? But the struggle against Plato, or, to express it more plainly and for the people, the struggle against the Christian ecclesiastical, it's a lot better, ecclesiastical, right there. Don't know how to read that one. Pressure of millennia. For Christianity's Platonism, for the people have created in Europe a magnificent. For Christianity's Platonism for the people. For Christianity's Platonism for the people has created in Europe a magnificent tension for the spirit such as has never existed on earth before. With so tense a bow, one can now shoot for the most distant targets. European men feel this tension as a state of distress, to be sure, and there have already been 2 grand attempts to relax the bow, once by means of Jesuitism, the second time by means of democratic enlightenment, which later in fact, with the aid of freedom of the press and the reading of newspapers, achieve a state of affairs in which spirit world would no longer so easily feel itself to be in need. Those are parentheses. The Germans invented gunpowder. All credits to them. But they invented the score again. They invented the press. But we who are neither Jesuits nor Democrats nor even sufficiently German, we good Europeans are free, very free spirits. We have it still, the whole need of a spirit and the whole attention of its bow, and perhaps also the arrow, the task and and who knows the target. Interesting way she did separates the Germans from Europeans, because I suppose nowadays we would consider a German a European because that's what they are. But this is also 1885, so who knows what they were thinking. Just want to look up. I'm not entirely sure what a Jesuit is. Just a man who believes in God. Catholics. Oh, priestly order? Unsure. Okay. Now to start. Sorry, this thing on my screen. Okay. Part 1. On the prejudices of philosophers. Now, starting here, I guess we'll finally be reading the word of my boy, Friedrich Nietzsche. Okay. The will to truth, which is still going to tempt us many... How long is this section? I want to gauge it. 22. 22 pages. We can read 22 pages tonight. The will to truth, which is still going to tempt us to many a hazardous enterprise. That celebrated Whoa. I thought we were reading difficult words then. This guy's pulling out shit I never even heard of. Okay. The will to truth, which is still going to tempt us to many a hazardous enterprise. That celebrated veracity? Veracity? Veracity. Veracity, of which all philosophers have hitherto spoken with reverence. What questions this will to truth has already set before us. What strange, wicked, questionable questions. It is already a long story, yet does it seem as if it has only just begun? It is any wonder we should at least grow distrustful, lose our patience, turn impatiently away? That the Sphinx would teach us to ask questions. Who really is it here that questions us? What really is it in us that wants the truth? We did indeed pause for a long time before the question of the origin of this will, until finally we came to a complete halt before an even more fundamental question. We asked after the value of this will. Granted, we want truth. Why not rather untruth? And uncertainty, even ignorance? The problem of the value of truth stepped before us. Or was it we who stepped before this problem? Which of us is Oedipus here? Which of us Sphinx? It is, it seems, a rendezvous of questions and question marks. And would you believe it? It has finally almost come to seem to us that this problem has never before been posed, that we have been the first to see it, to fix our eye on it, to hazard it? For there is a hazard in it, and perhaps there exists no greater hazard. How could someone originate in its antithesis? Truth and error, for example? Or to truth and will to deception? Or the unselfish act in self-interest? Or the pure, radiant gaze of the sage in covetousness? Covetousness? That's right here. I don't know why, I'm very against looking things up in general. I know I do it, but I try to limit it. I was interested in the word Jesuit, so I looked it up. This lighting is fucking me up. Oh. I don't know. Such origination is impossible. He who dreams of it is a fool, indeed worse than a fool. The things of the highest value must have other origin of their own. They cannot be derivable from this transitory, seductive, deceptive, mean little world from this confusion of desire and illusion, in the womb of being, rather in the intransitory, in the hidden God, in the thing in itself. That is where their cause must be lie and nowhere else. This mode of judgment constitutes the typical prejudice by which metaphysicians of all ages can be recognized. This mode of evaluation stands in the background of all their logical procedures. It is on account of this their faith that they concern themselves with their knowledge, or something that is at least solemnly baptized the truth. The fundamental faith of the metaphysician is the faith in antithetical values. It has not occurred to even the most cautious of them to pause in doubt here on the threshold, where however it was most needful they should, even if they had vowed to themselves, de omnibus dubitandum. I don't want to do this. Here. Here we go. Good enough for me? For it may be doubted. Firstly, whether there exists any antithesis at all, and secondly, whether these popular valuations and value antithesis on which the metaphysicians have set their seal, and not perhaps merely foreground valuations, merely provisional perspectives, perhaps moreover the perspectives of a hole and corner, perhaps from below, as if it were frog perspectives, to borrow an expression employed by painters. With all the value that may adhere to the true, the genuine, the selfless, it could be possible that a higher and more fundamental value for all life might have to be ascribed to appearance, to the will, to deception, to the will, deception, to selfishness, and to appetite. It might even be possible that what constitutes the value of those good and honored things reside precisely in their being artfully related, knotted, and crocheted to these wicked, apparently antithetical things. Perhaps even their being essentially identical with them. Perhaps. But who was willing to concern himself with such dangerous perhapses? Made up word. That we have to await the arrival of a new species of philosophers, one which possesses tastes and inclinations opposite to and different from those of its predecessors. Philosophers of the dangerous perhaps in every sense. And to speak in all seriousness, I see such new philosophers arising. Having kept a close eye on philosophers and read between their lines up for sufficient length of time, I tell myself, the greater part of conscious thinking must still be counted among the instinctive activities. And this is so even in the case of philosophical thinking. We have to learn differently here as we have learned differently in regard to heredity and the innate. Just as the act of being born plays no part in the procedure and progress of heredity, so being conscious is in no decisive sense the opposite of instinctive. Most of a philosopher's conscious thinking is secretly directed and compelled into defined channels by his instincts. Being all logic too, and its apparent autonomy there stand valuations in plainer terms, psychological demands for the preservation of a certain species for life. For example, that the definite shall be of greater truth than the indefinite, appearance of less value than truth. But such valuations of these could hold the regulatory importance for us notwithstanding. Be no more the foreground valuations. A certain species of Niaiseri, which may be necessary precisely for the preservation of beings such as us, assuming that it is to say that it is not precisely man who is the measure of things. I'm tired. I don't know why I decided to do this, but I am tired. I have to read 22 pages. I could read 10, but it's boring. The falseness of a judgment is to us not necessarily an objection to a judgment. It is here that our new language perhaps sounds strangest. The question is to what extent it is life advancing, life preserving, species preserving, perhaps even species breeding. And our fundamental tendencies is to assert that the falsest judgments to which synthetic judgment a priori belong, as the most indispensable to us, that without granting as true the fictions of logic, without measuring reality against the purely invented world of the uncoordinational and self-identical, without a continual falsification of the world by the means of numbers, mankind cannot live. That to renounce false judgments would be to renounce life, would be to deny life. To recognize untruth as a condition of life, that to be sure means to resist customary values, sentiments in a dangerous fashion, and a philosophy which ventures to do so places itself by that act alone beyond good and evil. What makes one regard philosophers half mistrustfully and half mockingly is not that one again and again detects how innocent they are, how often and how easily they fall into error and go astray, in short, childness and childlikeness, but that they display altogether insufficient honesty, while making a mighty and virtuous noise as soon as the problem of truthfulness is even remotely touched on. They pose as having discovered and attained their real opinions through the self-evolution of cold, pure, divinely unperturbed dialectic. In contrast to the mystics of every rank who are more honest and more stupid than they, those speaking of inspiration. Well, what happens at bottom is that a prejudice, a notion, an inspiration, generally a desire of the heart, sifted and made of strife, is defended by them with reasons sought after the event. They are one and all advocates who do not want to be regarded as such, and for most part no better than cunning pleaders for their prejudices which they baptize truths, and very far from possessing the courage of the conscience which admits this fact to itself, very far from possessing the good taste of the courage which publishes this fact whether to warn a foe or a friend, or out of high spirits and in order to mock itself. The Tartuffery, as stiff as it is virtuous, of old Kant, as he lures us along the dialectic bypaths which lead more correctly, mislead to his categorical imperative. This spectacle makes us smile. We who are fastidious and find no little amusement in observing the subtle tricks of old moralists and moral preachers. Not to speak of the hocus-pocus of mathematical form, which is as if in iron, Spinoza encased and masked his philosophy. The love of his wisdoms to render that word fairly and squarely, so as to strike terror into the heart of any assailant who should dare to glance at that invisible maiden in Pallas Athene. How much personal timidity and vulnerability this masquerade of a sick recluse betrays. This guy's really hateful. Pretty hateful. It has gradually become clear to me that what every great philosophy has hitherto been, a confession on the part of its author and a kind of involuntary unconscious memoir. Moreover, that the moral or immoral intentions in every philosophy has every time constituted the real germ of life, out of which the entire plant has grown. To explain how a philosopher's most remote metaphysical assertions have actually been arrived at, it is always well and wise to ask oneself first, what morality does he, aim at? I accordingly do not believe a drive to knowledge to be the father of philosophy, but that another drive has, here as elsewhere, only employed knowledge and false knowledge as a tool. But anyone who looks at the basic drives of mankind to see what extent they may in precisely this connection have come into play as inspirational spirits or demons and kobolds will discover that they all have at some time or other practiced philosophy, and that each one of them would be only too glad to present itself as the ultimate goal of existence and as the legitimate master of all other drives. For every drive is tyrannical, and it is as such that it tries to philosophize. In the case of scholars, to be sure, in the case of really scientific men, things may be different, better, if you will. There may really exist something like a drive to knowledge there, some work independent clockwork, which when wound up works bravely on without any of the scholars' other drives playing an essential part. The scholar's real interests therefore generally lie in another direction, perhaps in his family or in making money or in politics. It is indeed almost a matter of indifference whether his little machine is set up in this region of science or whether the promising young worker makes himself into good philologist or specialized in fungus or chemistry. He is not characterized by becoming this or that. In the philosopher, on the contrary, there is nothing whatever impersonal, and above all, his morality bears decisive testimony to who he is. That is to say, to the order of rank, the innermost drives of his nature stand in relative to one another. How malicious philosophers can be. I know of nothing more venomous than the joke Epicurus allowed himself to make against Plato and the Platonists. He called them Dionysiologis. Like Dionysus. Dionysiologis. Whatever. The literal and foreground meaning of this word is flatterers of Dionysus. That is to say, tyrants, hangers-on, and lickspittles in addition. However, it is to say as much that they are all actors. There's nothing genuine about them. And the later meaning is really the piece of malice that Epicurus discharged as Plato. He was seen by the grandiose manner, the mise en scène, of which Plato and his pupils were masters, of which Epicurus was not a master. He, the old school teacher from Samos, who sat hidden in his little garden at Athens, wrote 300 books. Who knows, perhaps out of rage with Plato and a bit ambitious envy of him. It took a century for Greece to find out who this garden god Epicurus had been. Did it find out? In every philosophy, there is a point at which the philosopher's conviction appears appears on the scene, or, to put in the words of an ancient mystery, I'm gonna read that simply because I feel like it's probably important. It's its own section. It's like 3 lines, and it has its own section. Adventavist Advent. I apologize for the train. There we go. Reddit says, Reddit's a very reliable source. So it says here, Advent avit asinus pulcher et fortimassimos. It says, the ass arrives, beautiful and most brave. Not sure what that could possibly mean. If the ass arrives, beautiful and most brave. And there's a point at which the philosopher's conviction. Oh, I should have realized. He's making fun of philosophers this entire time. So obviously he means that when they give their conviction, he just says they're wrong. He hates them so much, but they're so confident in themselves. Interesting. I'll read a couple more because I am tired though. You want to live according to nature? Oh, you noble Stoics, what fraudulent words think of being such as nature is prodigal beyond measure, indifferent beyond measure, without aims or intentions, without mercy or justice, at once fruitful and barren and uncertain. Think of indifference itself as power. How could you live accordingly to such indifference? To live, is that not precisely wanting to be other than this nature? Is living not vaulting, preferring being unjust, being limited, wanting to be different? And even if your imperative, live according to nature, meant at bottom the same thing as live according to life, how could you not do that? Why make a principle of what you yourselves are and must be? The truth of it is, however quite different, while you rapturously pose as deriving the canon of your law from nature, you want something quite the reverse of that. You strange actors and self-deceivers, your pride wants to prescribe your morality, your ideal, to nature. Yes, to nature itself, and incorporate them in it. You demand that nature should be nature according to the Stoa, and would like to make all existence exist only after your own image, as a tremendous eternal glorification of universalization of Stoicism. All your love of truth notwithstanding, you have compelled yourselves for so long and with such persistence and hypnotic rigidity to view nature falsely, namely stoically. You are no longer capable of viewing it in any other way, and some abysmal arrogance infects you at last with the bedlamite hope that because you know how to tyrannize over yourselves, Stoicism is self-tyranny. Nature too can be tyrannized over, for is the Stoic not a piece of nature? But this is an old and never-ending story. What formerly happened with the Stoics still happens today as soon as a philosophy begins to believe in itself. It always creates the world in its own image. It can't do otherwise. Philosophy is this tyrannical drive itself, the most spiritual will to power, to creation of the world, to cause prima. So these have all been like sections of like little like nuggets, like shit he has to say. Oh, because it is the prejudice of philosophers. Okay, I'm starting to understand this a little better now. The more I read on. Sweet. 10. I'm now gonna say the number because there's actually probably a lot of these. Yeah, there's a lot. Okay. There's 296, so almost 300. That is just absolutely ridiculous. And we are at 10. We will be reading all of them. Whoa. The zeal and subtlety, I might even say slyness, with which the problem of the real and apparent world is set upon all over Europe today makes one think hard and prick up one's ears. And anyone who hears in the background only a will to truth and nothing more certainly does not enjoy the best of hearing. In rare and isolated cases such as where was I? In rare and isolated cases such as a will to truth, some extravagant and adventurous courage, a metaphysician's ambition to maintain a forlorn position may actually play a part and finally prefer a handful of certainty to a whole careful of beautiful possibilities. There may even exist puritanical fanatics of conscience who would rather lie down and die on a sure nothing than on uncertain something. But this is nihilism, and the sign of a despairing mortally weary soul. However brave the bearing of such a virtue may appear in the case of stronger, livelier thinkers who are still thirsty for life. However, it seems to be different. When they take sides against appearance and speak even of perspective with an arrogant disdain, when they rank the credibility of their own body about as low as the credibility of the ocular evidence which say, the earth stands still, and thus with apparent good humor let slip their firmest possessions, for what is believed in more firmly than today than the body? Who knows whether they are not at bottom trying to win back something that was formerly an even firmer possession, some part or other of the old domain of faith, former times, perhaps the immortal soul, perhaps the old God, in short, ideas by which one could live better. That is to say, more vigorously and joyful than by modern ideas. There is distrust of these modern ideas in this outlook. There is disbelief in all that has been constructed yesterday and today. There is perhaps, in addition, a little boredom and mockery, which can no longer endure the bric-a-brac of concepts of the most various origin, such as so-called positivism brings to the market today. The disgust of a more fastidious taste at the village fair, motleyiness and patchiness of all reality philosophates, in whom there is nothing new or genuine except the motleyiness. In this, it seems to me, we ought to acknowledge that these spectacle anti-realists and knowledge microscopists of today are in the right. The instinct which makes them recoil from modern reality stands unrefuted. What to do we care about the retrograde bypass they choose. The essential thing about them is not that they want to go back, but that they want to get away. A little strength, soaring, courage, artistic power more, and they would want to go up and away and not back. 11. It seems to me that there is today an effort going on everywhere to distract itself. It seems to me that there is today an effort going on everywhere to distract attention from the actual influence exercised on German philosophy by Kant, and in particular, prudently to gloss over the value he set upon himself. Kant was first and foremost proud of his table of categories. With that table in his hand, he said, "This is the hardest thing that could ever be undertaken on behalf of metaphysics." But let us understand this could be. He was proud of having discovered a new faculty in man, the faculty of synthetic judgments. A priori, granted he deceived himself in this. The evolution and rapid burgeoning of German philosophy nonetheless depend on that pride of his and on the eager rivalry of the whole younger generation to discover, if possible, something of which to be still prouder, and in any event, new faculties. But let us stop and reflect. It is time we do so. Kant asked himself, how are synthetic judgments a priori possible? And what really did he answer? By means of a faculty. But unfortunately not in a few words, but so circumspectively, venerably, and with such an expenditure of German profundity and flourishes that the comical "Niariseri Alamede Mande" involved in such an answer was overlooked. People even lost their heads altogether on account of this new faculty, and the rejoicing reached its climax when Kant went on further to discover moral faculty in man. For at that time the Germans were still moral and by no means practitioners of real politics. The honeymoon time of German philosophy arrived, and the young theologians of the College of Tübingen went straight away off into the bushes, all in search of faculties. And what did they find? And what did they not find? In that innocent, rich, still youthful era of the German spirit to which the malicious fairy romanticism piped and sang in those days, when one was not yet able to distinguish between finding and inventing, they found above all faculty for the super. Sorry. I'll go to 15. Yeah. Between finding and inventing, they found above all a faculty for the suprasensible. Schelling baptized the intellectual intuition, and therewith satisfied the most heartfelt longings of his Germans, which longings were fundamentally pious. One can do no greater wrong to the whole high-spirited and enthusiastic movement, which was really youthfulness. However boldly it disguised itself in hoary and senile concepts, than to take it seriously, and in even worse injustice, to treat it with moral indignation. It is enough to say that one grew older, and the dreams disappeared. A time came when one rubbed one's eyes. One is still rubbing them today. How does he know I'm rubbing my eyes? What the hell? I need chapstick bad. I really need chapstick. Hold on. Take this off now. Oh fuck, I'm tired. Oh, it's been so long. Fuck, I lost my page. One can do no greater wrong to this whole high-spirited and enthusiastic movement, which was really youthfulness, however boldly it disguised itself in hoary and senile concepts, than to take it seriously, and in even worse injustice, to treat it with moral indignation. It is enough to say that one grew older, and the dreams disappeared. A time came when one rubbed one's eyes, one is still rubbing them today. One had been dreaming, and the first foremost of the dreamers was old Kant. By means of a faculty, he had said or at least meant. But is that an answer, an explanation, or is it rather merely a reception of the questions? How does opium induce sleep? By means of a faculty. Namely, the virtus normativa, replies in the doctor in Moliere. Quaes un el virtus normativa, sujus est natura sensus asopir. Being fluent in two romantic languages basically makes you fluent in like all of them. So just learn another one, and then get fluent at that one, and then another, and then another, and then another. Whoa. Anyways, but answers like that belong in comedy. Oh, fuck. Okay. Oh. Fuck, I'm getting really bad leg cramp. Oh. Oh, that hurt. I feel like it wasn't more of cramp, more I just felt like my muscles were moving, not like contracting. Because that's what cramp is, right? Their muscles, like. It was more like. That's what it felt like. Okay. But answers like that belong in comedy, and it is high time to replace the Kantian questions, how are synthetic judgments a priori possible, with another question. Why is belief in such judgment necessary? And that is to say, it is time to grasp that, for the purpose of preserving beings such as ourselves, such a judgment must be believed to be true, although they might, of course, still be false judgments. Or more clearly, crudely, and basically, synthetic judgments a priori should not be possible at all. We have no right to them. In our mouths they are nothing but false judgments. Belief in their truth is, of course, necessary as foreground belief and ocular evidence belonging to the perspective optics of life. Finally, in considering the enormous influence German philosophy I hope you understand that it is right to invent. And I've been burping a lot. I think it's because when I speak so much, so much air enters my mouth. I burp. I don't talk a lot. I'm usually, yeah, I don't. Is that a lie? That I don't talk that much? I feel like I talk plenty. But, like, obviously I'm talking. This is the content that I'm making. But, like, IRL, if we're hanging out, I speak a normal amount. I've gone like 40 minutes without not talking. Or without not talking. With being silent. I've talked a lot. It's been 40 minutes. And I've been talking a lot. So I feel like, air. I'm sorry. I apologize. I should stop talking about reading. I will continue reading. I hope you understand its right to inverted commas has exercised throughout Europe. One cannot doubt that a certain virtus normativa has played a part in it. The noble idlers, the virtuous, the mystics, the artists, the three-quarter Christians, and the political obscurantists, the political obscurantists of all nature were delighted to possess, thanks to German philosophy, an antidote to the still overwhelming sensualism which had overflowed out of the previous century into this short sensus assopiere. As for materialistic atomism, it is one of the best refuted things there are, and perhaps no scholar in Europe is still so unscholarly today as to accord its serious significance, except for hardly everyday use, as an abbreviated means of expression. Thanks above all to the Pole Boskowicz, who, together with the Pole Copernicus, has been the greatest and most triumphant opponent of ocular evidence hitherto. For while Copernicus persuaded us to believe, contrary to all senses, that the earth does not stand firm, Boskowicz taught us to abjure belief in the last thing of earth that stood firm, belief in substance, in matter, in the earth residuum and particle atom. It was the greatest triumph over the senses hitherto achieved on earth. One must, however, go still further and also declare war. Remorseless war of the knife on the atomic. It's like atomistic. Atom. Tom. What is it? Atomistic. I don't even want to show you anymore. My leg is totally asleep. Oh fuck! I just have my wallet on me. Okay. I'm ready. We're almost there. Atomistic? Ooh. I think I hit that. Atomistic need. Which, like that more famous metaphysical need, still going on a dangerous afterlife in regions where no one suspects it, one must also, first of all, finish off that other and more fateful atomism, which Christianity has taught best and longest, the soul atomism. Let this expression be allowed to designate that belief which regards the soul as being something indestructible, eternal, indivisible, as a monad, as an atom, and this belief ought to be ejected from science, which we ourselves. It is not all necessary by that same act to get rid of the soul itself, and thus forego one of the oldest and most venerable of hypotheses, as is often the way with clumsy naturalists who can hardly touch the soul without losing it. But the road to new forms and refinements of the soul hypothesis stands open in such concepts as mortal soul and soul as multiplicity of the subject, and soul as social structures of the drives and emotions, want henceforth to possess civic rights in science. To be sure, with the new psychologist puts an end to the superstition which has hitherto flourished around the soul idea. With almost tropical luxuries, he as it were thrust himself onto the new wilderness, and a mistrust. It may be that the old psychologist has had a merrier and more comfortable time of it. Untimely, however, he sees that precisely that act he has also condemned himself to inventing the new, and who knows, perhaps to finding it. I'm gonna go get water. I'm so thirsty. My throat parched. Mama that I'm sorry. It was like you guys. I got water, but I'm sorry about the last clip. I don't know if you ever seen this video, but it's like it's important because it's like these two pretty girls, and then the caption is like pretty girl humor, and it's like them like quoting. It's them quoting like other videos, and they're like I'm talking about in it, and they're like Mama that burn, they're like that. So it's a reference to a reference of them referencing. It's a reference to them referencing another video. It's not that deep, but it's still meta. Anyways, and then I'm also worried like my roommates are gonna like open my door and they're gonna. It's like that episode of Smiling Friend was like with the evil scientist, and then like be like yo, and if you know the one, you know the one. It's in season 2, but I also stole a taffy from one of my roommates, but don't tell them. I'm not too crazy on chocolate. Okay, hold on. What is this? Where is that? Hey, don't forget to hang in there. How do I point to it? Oh. Hold on. Twist it. What that? How do you... Like that? Okay, with thumbnail. Boom. Got it. Got it. Clip it. Clip it. Okay. Sorry. I like to have fun. Like like to think I'm a fun guy. Okay. Almost done. Psychologists should think again before postulating the drive to self-preservation as the cardinal drive in an organic being. A living thing desires above all to vent its strength. Life as such is will to power. A self-preservation is only one of the indirect and most frequent consequences of it. In short, here as everywhere, beware of superfluous teleological principles, such as a drive to self-preservation. We owe it to Spinoza's inconsistency. For this is a requiem of method, which is essentially to become economy of principles. Oh, that was 13, sorry. 14. It is perhaps just dawning on 5 or 6 minds that physics, too, is only an interpretation and arrangement of the world, according to our own requirements, if I say so, and not an explanation of the world. But in so far as it is founded on belief in the senses, that it passes for more than that, and must continue to do so for a long time to come. It has the eyes and the hands on its side, as ocular evidence and palpability on its side. And this has the effect of fascinating, persuading, convincing an age with fundamentally plebeian tastes. For it instinctively follows the canon of eternal popular sensualism. Oh, I thought that was common. For it instinctively follows the canon of eternal popular sensualism. What is obvious, what has been explained, only the which can be seen and felt. Thus far has every problem to be scrutinized. Adversely, as precisely in opposition to palpability, that the charm of the Platonic mode of thinking, which was a noble mode of thinking, consisted on the part of men who perhaps rejoiced in even stronger and more exacting senses than our contemporaries possess, but who knew how to experience a greater triumph in mastering them, which they did by means of pale, cold, grey, conceptual nets thrown over the motley whirl of the senses, the mob of the senses, as Plato called them. This overcoming interpretation of the world in the manner of Plato involved a kind of enjoyment different from which the physicists of today offer us, from that offered us by the Darwinists and anti-teleologists among the laborers in physiology. with their principle of the smallest possible effort and the greatest possible stupidity, where man has nothing more to see or grasp as he has nothing more to do. That is certainly a different imperative from the Platonic, but for an uncouth, industrious race of machinists and bridge builders of the future which has had nothing but coarse work to get through, it may well be the right one. 15. This is the last one because I'm so tired and I still need my phone time. I'm Gen Z. I need phone time before bed. 15. If one is to pursue psychology with a good conscience, one is compelled to insist that the organs of sense are not phenomena, in the sense of idealist philosophy, for if they were, could not be the cause. Sensualism, therefore, is at least a regulative hypothesis concerning a heuristic principle. What? And others even go as far as to say that the external world is the work of our organs, but then our body, as a piece of this external world, would be the work of our organs. But then our organs themselves would be the work of our organs. This seems to me is a complete reductio ad absurdum, supposing that the concept of causa sui is something altogether absurd. Consequently, the external world is not the work of our organs. I feel like, oh my god. Yeah, I'm not reading 16. 16 is like a page long. That's a weird note to end on. I don't understand that. I did not understand that last part at all. I am so tired. But I hope you understood something from this video. I hope you're reading along. If you are reading along, I just checked before I started filming. I got 4 new subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. I appreciate it. Listen, I know how the cookie crumbles. You get 4 subscribers, you feel like $1,000,000. You feel on top of the world. But after that, no one subscribed. But you know what? I'm still grateful for every single one of those. So, thank you for subscribing. New videos guaranteed on Tuesday and Thursday. There could be more in between. I could be having fun somewhere and I wanted to show you. Probably not. But yeah, if you have any more suggestions of any other kind of content you want to see, comment down below. Thank you for watching. I'm going to bed.